Gentlemen, my friends, fellow compatriots, fellow humans from across the planet, I am Nikhil Parekh. In this video, I shall be talking about my book titled Life Equal to Death, Volume 10, Poems on Life, Death, as well as giving you a recitation of different poems from this book of mine. So friends, let me commence with an introduction to this book of mine. About the poetry book. This book, which has 34 differently titled poems, is actually volume 10 of the book titled Life Equal to Death, Poems on Life, Death, 1200 pages. This enigmatic collection of poems explores and equates the boundless possibilities of life and death and delves into each intricate inexplicability of survival. Parekh's roving philosophical eye. Parekh's roving philosophical eye brings the unconquerable richness of life to the fore, and yet at the same time explicitly highlights the veracity of death as the absolute certainty of every existence. The poet joyously celebrates the occasions of both life and death with equal panache. In each poetic stanza sewn with the uncanny mysteries of this universe. The poems within immortalize both life and death as the ultimate victories and the two most contrastingly amazing and divine sides of creation. Catapulting the reader to the threshold of ultimate ecstasy, they bring about an impromptu twist with the closure of breath and what lies beyond. This charismatically woven collection of poetic verse would equally enamor the narcissist as well as the simple humanitarian to the core. This book is a humble attempt to enlighten the readers with the equality of life and death and to live in both to the most unparalleled fullest, embracing only the religion of humanity as the Lord has commanded every living being on earth. As the Lord has commanded every living being on earth. You can't die in life and can't live in death. Each of these components are irrefutably equal in every respect and should be worshipped with due obeisance. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I shall give you a recitation of 4 different poems from this book of mine. These differently titled poems are Life. Life is a brilliant mixture of it all. Free. "31st December, my ultimate hero," and Deep Ocean of Secrets. Deep Ocean of Secrets. Of course, at any juncture of mesmerizing existence, you can purchase this book of mine from Amazon.com. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a recitation of my poem titled Life is a Brilliant Mixture of It All from this book of mine. Is life solely about benevolently donating each passionately eclectic instant of yours to every tangible and intangibly hapless fragment of deteriorating living kind? Is life solely about fervently loving someone so much that brand new definitions of love were immortally embedded once again in every perceivably suspended ingredient of the invincible atmosphere? Is life solely about fantasizing beyond the realms of the ordinary, plunging deeper and deeper each zipping second into an unfathomable gorge of inscrutably uncanny excitement? His life solely about inexhaustively admiring every single of the omniscient Lord's, every single of the omniscient Lord's infinite creations, admiring every single of the omniscient Lord's infinite creations, transforming into the truest poet at the tiniest insinuation, transforming into the truest poet at the tiniest insinuation of blossoming nature divine. His life solely about befriending everyone around you, irrespective of caste, creed, religion or tribe, and irrespective of whether it was the worst of your enemy, pugnaciously staring down the whites of your eyes. His life solely about titillating the obscurest bud of dust. His life solely about titillating the obscurest bud of taste in your tongue with the most inimitable cuisines directly from the lap of Mother Nature for a countless hours in a day. His life solely about indefatigably sermonizing the ideals of symbiotically peaceful existence which you had yourself imbibed in each ingredient of your blood as you had unflinchingly traversed through every of its lane. His life solely about burying your face unimaginably deep into the bosom of your sacred mother, and then feeling the most unconquerable man alive in the cold-blooded face of even the ghastliest of death. His life solely about living out even the most bizarre of your whims and eccentricities to the fullest, walking on your self-created cloud nine all the time, as long as it didn't the tiniest hurt any living kind. His life solely about triumphantly breathing in the spirit of unassailable humanity and unsparingly beheading even the most obfuscated trace of the devil to amorphously feckless chowder. His life solely about incessantly singing hymns of beauty, perpetuating even the most robotically dilapidated cranny of the atmosphere with the freshness of miraculously blessing creation. His life solely about sizzling each unfalling second in the flames of adventure, precariously teetering on the edge of space, yet feeling the adrenaline rush towards the ultimate summits of paradise. His life solely about earnestly saluting each act of altruistic kindness. His life solely about earnestly saluting each act of altruistic kindness, falling in due obeisance only in the feet of immortal love, as it spread like a magician's wand in each poignant heartbeat alike. Is life solely about looking forward to the optimistic rays of tomorrow, untiringly rising every time you hopelessly flounder into nothingness and fall to become the eternal scent of a new dawn? Is life solely about timelessly finding your way? Is life solely about timelessly finding your very own inimitably priceless identity amidst a pack of satanically pouncing wolves, challenging the tyrannical norms of destiny to chart the pathway of your own dreams? Is life solely about irrefutably saying no to even the most diminutive insinuation of dreaded lies? Saying no to even the most diminutive insinuation of dreaded lies, torching the mortuaries of lackadaisical nests forever with the omnipresent flame of truth. Is life solely about developing relationships more inseparably thicker than those of the blood, where the tide of humanitarian compassion and friendship beautifully transcended over one and all? Is life solely about reliving those impeccably golden moments of the exuberant past, transiting back into those fresh cries of birth, where the whole world for once became a cradle of magnificent togetherness? No, it never was solely. But life is an emphatically brilliant mixture of it all. No, it never was solely. But life is an emphatically brilliant mixture of it all. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall now give you a recitation of my poem titled Free. So here is a recitation of my poem, Free, from this book of mine. Free, the very word perpetuated even the most hopelessly deadened persona, forever and ever and ever, with rays of magically unfettered and inimitably priceless hope. Free, the very word metamorphosed even the most shrewdly castrated of businessmen, forever and ever and ever, into a festoon of unabashedly delightful smiles. Free, the very word triggered every human to shrug all inhibitions of caste, creed, status and religion, forever and ever and ever, exist as impregnably one under the fathomless sky of the Creator Divine. Under the fathomless sky of the Creator Divine. Free, the very word annihilated iconoclastically pompous anarchy forever and ever and ever, ensured that the most unconquerable of kings, as well as the beleaguered pauper, uninhibitedly ate in the same plate. Free, the very word massacred even the most infidel insinuation of tension, forever and ever, cast an incantation of eternal happiness over every conceivable speck of the atmosphere. Free, the very word quelled all pugnaciously beheading war to a celestial rest, forever and ever, showered a rain of miraculously ameliorating equality on granule of mother soil. Free, the very word magically resonated as the ultimate crown of existence in all years. The very word magically resonated as the ultimate crown of existence in all years, forever and ever, triumphing over the devil of insanely tyrannical commercialism. Free, the very word timelessly rendered happiness to the breath of every miserably impoverished being, forever and ever, ensured that none slept a hungry stomach on this boundlessly bewitching earth. Free, the very word perennially broke all jails of despicably humiliating slavery, forever and ever, liberated demonically asphyxiating blackness into invincibly befriending sunlight. Free, the very word unfathomably inspired every fraternity of existence to be wholeheartedly creative, forever and ever, unwound the clockwork of robotic despair into a universe of undefeated freshness. Free, the very word brought the most unbelievably ultimate revolution in people's attitude towards survival, forever and ever, making them give instead of ruthlessly snatching the same from each other. Free, the very word, put a veritable end to every instant of salacious gloominess. Forever and ever, made an organism feel the closest to its rudiments of unashamedly simplistic existence. To its rudiments of unashamedly simplistic existence. Free, the very word, ended all painstakingly internal conflict of the mind, body and soul. Forever and ever, made a person realize that there was nothing more resplendent and unassailable than immortal love. Free, the very word uncontrollably spun. The very word uncontrollably spun webs of insupportably iridescent fantasy in every mind alike. Forever and ever, drifted all living kind towards the mists of tirelessly evolving heaven. Free, the very word added unlimited paces to every frenetically diminishing stride. Forever and ever, fomenting living beings to don nothing else but bond in threads of unbreakable compassion and blissfully proliferate. Free, the very word bountifully illuminated every delirious space on earth with beams of prosperity. Forever and ever, completing the process of existence with the signature of unshakable friendship. Free, the very word taught every heart on this universe to forget hate. Taught every heart on this universe to forget hate and solely love. Forever and ever, coalesce every of its sacrosanct beat with the unparalleled silhouette of the Lord Divine. Coalesce every of its sacrosanct beat with the unparalleled silhouette of the Lord Divine. Free, the very word made every organism. Free, the very word made every organism profusely delve into the realms of sensuousness. Forever and ever, realize that it was the ardor of faithfulness that rechristened and added new dimensions to existence. But did you realize that for getting and acquiring everything on this gigantic planet for free, one has to first and foremost undergo the most excruciating of pains to take birth and then pay the price of life? But did you realize that for getting and acquiring everything on this gigantic planet for free, one has to first and foremost undergo the most excruciating of pains to take birth and then pay the price of life? Ladies and gentlemen, I shall now give you a recitation of my poem titled 31st December, My Ultimate Hero. So here is a recitation of this poem of mine from this book of mine. Irrespective of whether they were extraordinarily happy or whether they inconsolably fretted in the eyes of utter desperation, with the gruesome blackness of extinction ominously maiming each of their senses. Irrespective of whether they were perennially successful or whether they miserably floundered countless times even before alighting a single foot, unnecessarily losing it in their bouts of whimsical fidgetiness. Irrespective of whether they were unsurpassably rich or whether they profusely slavered at the most diminutive morsel of food, brutally emaciating since a record number of days, and treacherously fretting nights, and treacherously freezing nights, irrespective of whether they were in unconquerable space or whether they were left to uncouthly stagnate on the fecklessly sordid streets and hackneyed gutter bins of the country's largest slum. Irrespective of whether they sang boundless tunes in the praise of the Lord, or whether they sadistically licked up every pint of spit emitted by the vindictively trouncing devil, irrespective of whether they bustled as perfectly symbiotic busybodies, or whether they aimlessly loitered through the lanes of slandering oblivion, which had nothing but hoarse regret to offer as a pathetic end product. Irrespective of whether they were unassailable magicians, or whether all what they dared touch sullenly metamorphosed into frigidly incoherent bits of lame dust. Irrespective of whether they were invincible perfectionists, or whether they perpetually adhered to the famous axiom, to err is human, and immortalized the same with their relentless failures. Irrespective of whether they were triumphantly persevering, or whether they lazed and endlessly lazed, even under the most acrimoniously scorching sun, just because their bones creaked a trifle whilst getting up. Irrespective of whether they were brilliantly optimistic, or whether they lugubriously crumbled every instant, reminiscing the mortuaries of the dreadfully asleep past. Irrespective of whether they were unflinching patriots, or whether they darted at the speed of lightning for cover at the tiniest insinuation of the most imperceptible danger. Irrespective of whether they were blessedly fantasizing, or whether they lecherously circumscribed their entire lives within the constraints of the monotonously clerical corporate office. Irrespective of whether they were unconquerably truthful, or whether they were brutally trapped in satanically parasitic web of lies, resorting to it inevitably to find that ultimate escape route in today's manipulative world. Irrespective of whether they existed on the freezing North Pole, or whether they compassionately warmed each ingredient of their blood under majestic rays of the sun, or whether they compassionately warmed each ingredient of their blood under majestic rays of the sun, extreme south. Irrespective of whether they conversed in articulate English, or whether they uninhibitedly recharged the atmosphere with every vibrancy of indigenous language that was spoken under the sun. Irrespective of whether they were the perfectly synchronized gentlemen, or whether they resided in rustically mud-baked huts, bursting at the seams to accommodate an innumerable more of their kind. Irrespective of whether they were Christ-fearing Christians, or whether they were an equally Bhagwan, Allah, Buddha-fearing Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and every other sacred tribe on earth divine. irrespective of whether they were Christ-fearing Christians or whether they were an equally Bhagwan, Allah, Buddha-fearing Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, and every other sacred tribe on earth divine. Irrespective of whether they wholeheartedly celebrated wondrous Xmas, or whether they zealously indulged in the lights and colors of Holi, Diwali, Muharram, Eid, and countless other sacred festivals of the likes, or whether they zealously indulged in the lights and colors of Holi, Diwali, Muharram, Eid, and countless other sacred festivals of the likes. Oh yes, irrespective of anything and everything, on the 31st of December every year, all of them joined hands in one inseparable mass together, embraced each other without the tiniest of discrimination, to welcome the newest dawn of all times, the dawn of a joyously happy new year, the first sunrise of a magical 1st January. Oh yes, irrespective of anything and everything, on the 31st of December every year, all of them joined hands in one inseparable mass together, embraced each other without the tiniest of discrimination, to welcome the newest dawn of all times, the dawn of a joyously happy new year, the first sunrise of a magical 1st January. Ladies and gentlemen, I shall now give you a recitation of my poem titled Deep Ocean of Secrets. So here is a recitation of my poem titled Deep Ocean of Secrets from this book of mine. Be it belonging to the infinitesimally irate ant who traversed in infinite steps in its journey from the bottom of the majestic dinner table to its tantalizingly steaming top. Be it belonging to the stoically invincible Everest, which stood with its head high as the lone, unflinchingly exuberant warrior, even as the entire planet beside was dissolving into the mortuaries of hopelessness. Be it belonging to the measly disheveled mushroom, frenetically staggering with each draught of fresh air, trying to solidly emboss its very own place in the languid bits of mud circumscribing it. Be it belonging to the wondrously tangy wave, dissipating into an unparalleled festoon of royal froth, triggering an inevitable smile on every bygone face after clashing against the seductive black rocks. Be it belonging to the voluptuously crimson thunder cloud, which craved and unstoppably craved for its time to melt into a boundless droplets of everlastingly mollifying rain. Be it belonging to the incongruously bohemian barking dog. Be it belonging to the incongruously bohemian barking dog, who uncontrollably growled 19 to the dozen even in ghastly midnight, until its voice was eventually heard by its callous master. Be it belonging to the perennially flowering tree, which blossomed into umpteenth a dazzling leaf every now and again, and whose each minuscule root had entrapped in it the hidden enigmas of a time before time was pragmatically born. Be it belonging to the diminutively impoverished cubicle of stray ice, trembling and infinite times, every unfalling instant, in anticipation of its worst enemy, the sun. In anticipation of its worst enemy, the sun, blazing out and forever pulverizing the chapter of its existence beyond its livid grave. Be it belonging to the indiscriminately behemoth dinosaur, for whom everything else on earth was a maudlin buffoonery of time, as it toyed with all creation in the center of its palm till its last breath destined. Be it belonging to the insignificantly tiny shell lying astray on the skewed shores, fighting left, right, and center for its very existence, even as each gigantic wave inexorably tried to drown to the rock bottom of the sea. Be it belonging to the vivaciously dancing peacock, which spread its romantic plumage full throttle in anticipation of its dream mate, with the very first showers of ravishingly golden rain. Be it belonging to the obnoxiously featured cockroach, spending an infinite of its lives, fretfully meandering round the disdainful lavatory seat, an indescribable miles far away from the freshness of rising sunlight. Be it belonging to the raunchily descending bat, searching for every conceivable prey of its blindfolded, since its very first cry of morosely blackened and topsy-turvy hackneyed life. Be it belonging to the most impoverished ingredient of the atmosphere, swept to its non-existent grave every second by the slightest puff of wind, and then found floating again in some indecipherable part of the fathomless universe. Be it belonging to the very last brick in the boundlessly deep foundation, which timelessly winced in unheard pain, an intransigently agonizing scream which fell on deaf ears, and with only the darkness around it as its lone companion. Be it belonging to the pinch of vapid dust which either got ruthlessly swept, heartlessly trampled, ludicrously blown, condemningly spat upon by every cold-blooded stroke of unsparing destiny. Be it belonging to the velvety blade of emerald grass, which perennially romanced in the isles of untamed desire, with each droplet of mesmerizing golden dew. Be it belonging to the evanescent entrenchment of the parsimonious horizons, which try as hard as they could, but were never successful in salvaging their own identity, but were never successful in salvaging their own destiny, identity amidst the day, afternoon, and wild night. Be it belonging to the incongruously babbling eunuch, stretching to every threshold of raucously unimaginable obscenity, in order to evict those quintessential bundles of currency from the spurious society outside. Oh yes, be it belonging to conceivably anyone on this tirelessly ingratiating earth, Every palpitating heart has, is, and shall forever remain an unconquerably deep ocean of secrets. Oh yes, be it belonging to conceivably anyone on this tirelessly ingratiating earth, every palpitating heart has, is, and shall forever remain an unconquerably deep ocean of secrets. Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, fellow humans, compatriots from across the planet, it truly was a spectacular privilege for me to have given a recitation of my poetry to your exuberant jurisdiction. From the innermost dormitory of my soul, I wanted to express my gratitude to you for having so gloriously patronized my poetry. Of course, at any juncture of victorious existence, you can purchase this book of mine from Amazon.com. Thank you for listening to me.